And welcome to this planning committee meeting on the 1st of September 2021. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the council's internet site. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, I shouldn't read this, we're not in the council chamber. Would members please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch off the microphones when they've finished. Also, could you ensure that you refrain from using any mobile devices during the planning committee, and any mobile phones, iPads are switched off or on silent. Thank you very much. Apologies, we have one already from Councillor William Routley. And John Guy contacted me late last night. His wife has got a hospital appointment, so he'll be late to the meeting. Hopefully we'll attend. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to make declarations of interest? And if so, on which matter?
Chair?
Yes?
It's Councillor Townsend. I don't know whether it's on the agenda, but I've been asked to speak on the Constant Street application. Yes,
I've got you listed as the ward member speaking, Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Oh, that's all right. Thanks, Chair. Okay.
And then we come to the next item on the agenda, which are the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of August. Everybody's had them and examined them. For accuracy first, page 5, then page 6. Are there any matters arising? If not, would somebody propose a correct record, please?
Yeah, proposed, Chair.
Seconded, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And we move on then to agenda for today. Item 1. Which is on pages 15 to 38 of your paperwork. It's application number 20-1215. The site is Kevin Madley Farm Park, Dagan Road. The ward is Marshfield. The ward members are Councillor Richard White and Tom Suller. The presenting officer is Jackie King, Senior Planning Officer. There is a public speaker, Mr. Rhys Edwards, who's the applicant, and I can hand over now to Jackie King. Thank you very much. You're on mute, Jackie, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll share my screen now. Again, thank you very much, Chair. Planning permission is sought for a replacement building at Kevin Mumbly Farm Park. Hopefully you've got a map up in front of you which shows that the farm park is in the corner here.
Sorry, Jackie, your screen hasn't been shared at the minute. There's no map.
Okay. Still no luck?
No.
Bear with me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Chair, we were talking about this earlier. We're all novices, I think we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we there with the map?
Yes, we can see a map.
Thank you very much. I do apologise. I'll start again if that's okay. As you correctly said, the application relates to Kevin Mumbly Farm Park. The farm park is sited here, which is the west of the village of Michelson of Edu. The farm park has been in existence since the 1990s and has grown over the years to produce quite a popular tourist attraction for locals, tourists and schools. I'll zoom in on the site a bit more. The building in question, or the application in question, relates to the building here in this portion of the site. This is Bagan Road, and there's other outbuildings there, and the remainder of the farm park to the east. The application seeks to replace this building. The building was severely damaged by flood in February 2020. It was I believe, Storm Dennis. So the opportunity is being taken to replace this building and replace the series of link buildings which sort of form the farm park with one purpose-built building. I can zoom in a bit more for you there. There's the remainder of the farm park. This is the building in question. This is the River Rumney. The existing building is this building here. Do I need to zoom in for you a bit?
Yes, perhaps, yes.
Yeah. So this forms the existing building, comprises the existing building, which you can see is a series of linked buildings. The site has increased incrementally over the years and has grown to a very popular tourist attraction. It's proposed to replace this complex of buildings with a single building and an additional covered area, which would comprise the small area covered area. This would be the front elevation that you would reach when you come into the car park and the entrance to the site. You can see it is a much larger building. It's a single span building. I'll show you some more elevations. This shows the comparison of the outline of the proposed building in relation to the existing building. This shows the elevation that you would see from the car park. This would be the entrance to the site. And this shows the elevation from the farm park. That shows what the original building was like. And this shows the proposed side and rear elevation of the building. The applicant has sought to sort of replace with a more fit for purpose building. He proposes a single span building, which is why it is higher. That means that you have less pillars, which allows better access to the site. There's more ventilation, and it generally works for a much better building. As I said earlier, the site sort of grew incrementally over the years with a series of smaller buildings. So now there's the opportunity to put in a building that's more fit for purpose. The other reason for the increase in height is, as I alluded to, the original building suffered severe flood damage, and the floor level now needs to be increased to ensure that the replacement building would be flood free in the event of any future flooding. The slide I've got up in front of you now shows the existing floor plan. Again, if I zoom in a little bit for you, it shows the entrance, the shop, the cafe, the kitchens, the area of soft play, various seating areas, and then the external area which houses the small animals and sort of general petting area. The proposed floor plan is quite similar to what's there at the moment. Again, you've got the entrance on the side. You come into a similar building footprint with a larger preparation area for cafe and kitchen. The shop is in the same site as the existing shop. This is the area of soft play, which is more or less in the same location as the existing area, new toilets and a route to the first floor. What the applicant has done is they've edged red the footprint of the existing building, and obviously you can see it moves over slightly. There the river is in this area, moves over slightly from the river. It squares off, and then you have access into the covered area where you have the sort of small animals. There is an increase. Oh, I'll go to the first floor and then we'll carry on with the other issues. This shows the existing first floor, which had offices and storage. And this slide shows the proposed first floor, which is sort of larger office areas and storage. This area would be void above the general seating area, cafe, soft play, just to provide a sort of more pleasing ventilated space. So the main issues with the proposal are it's larger, so it's visual impact. Obviously the issue of flooding, the issue of retail impact, highways issue, and impact on the footpaths. If I go through the visual impact, the building is larger, but as this photo will hopefully explain, this is the view of the site from Bagan Road. The buildings that have been replaced are in this corner here. The photograph hopefully illustrates that these buildings to a degree screen the site when vehicles are coming up from Bagan Road. That's another view, sort of zooming in a bit more. The access to the farm park is here into the car park that I've already mentioned. The river is in this area, and as the photograph illustrates, there are trees on the opposite bank of the river which seek to screen the site from views further to the west, and there are trees sort of on the edge of the car park. I'll show an aerial photo which maybe gives an idea of the context a bit more. The photo I was just showing you is from there. This is the access to the site. This shows the vegetation, the tree belt along the river. This is the building that we're talking about. I have a photo from here which shows that this is going towards the bridge above the river, which is quite near the entrance to the site, and it illustrates that the site is quite well screened from that sort of aspect to the west of the site. And then I have a photo from the route into Kevin Madley Hospital, which is on a ridge high up above the site. This is the access road that takes you up to the hospital. This was taken when obviously the trees weren't in full leaf, but this is the site at the moment. This is the area where the buildings are to be replaced. That, again, it's not entirely clear, but that is the existing house which is in Kevin Madley Farm Park. Gives an idea of obviously the impact of the new building, which would be in this place. The building has commenced construction, and the frame has been erected, which you can see here. This is the existing house I was just talking about. This is the building frame that has gone up, and as I say, work has commenced on site. I consider that the building, whilst large, its main views are from Bagan Road. The landscape officer is satisfied that the building being so far from the road isn't going to be highly conspicuous. The impact can be mitigated further by putting some planting in this area on the hedge here, which would help screen it a little bit. And the applicant has agreed that some landscaping can go in here to help sort of screen the site. But I consider the style of building is agricultural in nature. It's a rural area. The existing buildings on the site are fairly large. Yes, this is going to be a large building, but I feel it's not going to be out of context and at odds with the character of the area. There is a footpath here, which I should have mentioned, that goes at the side of the building. And again, users of those footpaths are used to sort of passing by buildings. So I don't consider it's going to be at odds with the sort of existing situation, be it larger. If we turn to the next issue of flooding, as I mentioned, that the building did obviously suffer huge flood damage. The section 7.8 of the report goes through the sort of flooding background and the policy context in quite detail. The application has been supplemented by a flood consequence assessment, and it recommends that the replacement building be set at a height of 23.4 metres AOD, which is what is proposed, and hence it being slightly higher than, well, not slightly higher, it is higher than the existing building. Natural Resources Wales have confirmed that as long as this condition is imposed on any consent, they would not object to the development. And obviously the applicant has confirmed that is the submission proposal, that it be set at that height. It's also recommended that the applicant, if they have not already done so, signs up to the flood warning. And again, that is confirmed in the flood consequence assessment, that would be the objective, to ensure that the building becomes as flood proof as possible in the future. Next issue is retail. As I've already explained, the existing farm park building had a shop. Here we go. It's proposed to retain the shop. It's very fractionally larger than the existing shop. The applicant has submitted a retail impact statement, and as per paragraph 7.7 of the report, the policy issues have been discussed, and it is considered that the retail assessment satisfies the requirements of the various policies in the local plan. The principle of farm shop has been accepted, and there is only a slight increase in the size of the shop. Various conditions are suggested which recommend that the shop be called a farm shop. It only sells goods that a farm shop would sell. But generally the principles established, and we've got no objection to the slight increase in the size of the farm shop. The next issue is highways, and Kevin Madley Farm Park is accessed from Bagan Road, as I've already explained. I'll bring up the aerial photo. It's accessed from Bagan Road, and Bagan Road is a narrow single track road. You enter the site and the car park area is here, and there's an overflow car park area in this part of the site. The applicant has been supplemented by transport assessments, which have provided some TRIX data to indicate an estimate of how the development might affect visitor numbers. The Highways Officer has objected to the proposal. The Highways Officer is concerned that the increase in floor space will inevitably increase traffic movements. The area is served by narrow country lanes, and it feels that this will be detrimental to highway safety. The applicant has provided information to estimate the increase in visitor numbers. it's been suggested by the statements that the site would generate 80 movements per day. That's an annual average figure. They have sort of further provided information that would show that the vehicle movements would increase by in the region of 20%. So at the moment, they consider there's approximately 70 vehicle movements on a weekday, 200 on a weekend. The predicted increase would be an additional 25 per day on a weekday and 72 per day on a weekend. It's difficult. The applicant didn't have a record of existing visitor numbers. So obviously data has been presented using the sort of tricks analysis, which tries to sort of draw data from sort of similar operations elsewhere. I think what's important to sort of consider is the site obviously exists, it functions as a farm park at the moment. The proposal is for a replacement building, but it doesn't replace the existing uses. The footprint is larger, it increases at ground floor level in the region of 270 square metres. But the uses aren't necessarily going to sort of increase further than that which happens at the moment. The area of the outdoor small area pens increases, but again, it's considered this is very much ancillary to the sort of farm park operation, and is unlikely to sort of significantly increase visitor numbers. It's obviously Kevin Madley is a welcome tourist attraction, and it does benefit the rural economy. It employs members of staff. The applicant has confirmed there's about 19 full-time members and 21 part-time members. It can't be ignored that the highway network is poor, but obviously it is an attraction that already exists. The applicant submitted, or the applicant's agent submitted, a topographic survey, and it does show that parts of the highway are wider in places, which does allow vehicles to sort of pass. I mean, there's you can see there's little field gates along the area, access sort of gates which help allow sort of vehicles to pass, and there are sections where traffic can pass each other. The access is poor, but as I say, it's already an established use, and I feel that visitor numbers are not going to increase to such an extent that it will worsen the highway situation. The applicant has suggested that it's not their intention to increase visitor numbers, and has also sort of explained that as per currently with the COVID situations, there is a booking situation that exists, and maybe this could be continued to sort of ensure that numbers are sort of controlled. From the planning point of view, that's obviously quite difficult to enforce. So I think it still needs to be considered in its own right. Is the proposal going to be that much more intensive to cause such a highway issue? And we consider that the application on balance is acceptable. In terms of car parking, I can bring down a slide. This shows the car parking arrangement. Enter the site. The applicant has confirmed that people marshal at particularly busy times to direct the traffic into the main car park area and an overflow area here. So the number of spaces is about 164 spaces provided, which corresponds with the increase in floor area. The site can obviously accommodate a number of car parking spaces, and it's similar to how it operates at the moment. There already is the car park here with the overflow. So it is considered that the car parking area is acceptable. The final issue is footpath. As I mentioned previously, there is a footpath sited to the west of the building. The pink line there indicates the line of what is the actual public right of way. There's a hatch blue line here which shows what path is actually on the ground. I've got some photos that shows the path. That was the building. That's a view from the other end of the footpath. The footpath currently is obstructed by the building and the existing building, and the proposed building would also affect the line of the route. There is a solution to this. Obviously, normally the applicant would be encouraged to apply for a footpath diversion. But in consultation with the legal department and the footpaths officer, there's another solution, which is a mechanism whereby the applicant can enter into a dedication agreement, which ensures that the route here is made available for the public to use. That is what happens currently, and it seems a way forward, and has obviously been recommended as a solution by the legal section. The applicant is quite agreeable to that, so a condition is suggested that would ensure that this route is made available. It's on the ground at the moment, but the agreement is signed prior to the first use of the replacement building. Just sort of other factors to consider. Ecology, again, no objection has been raised to the proposed building. Ecological enhancement would be required, and a condition would be suggested to ensure that such enhancements are put in place. The impact on neighbours. The neighbours in the borough of Newport are located some distance from the application site, which is up here. However, in Caerphilly Council, there is a property here, which is quite close to the new building. As the photograph shows, trees screen the proposed building to a degree from the dwelling, and for the reasons stated, it's considered that the building is obviously replacing existing buildings. The eaves elevation of the building is on this line, which is what this building would be sort of affected by most. So it's considered the relationship with that neighbouring property is on balance acceptable. There are some listed structures near the site. The bridge here is a listed structure, but as my photo showed, that is, sorry, it's into the sun, but that is, you know, the view from the bridge, and it's the site isn't highly visible. It really is considered this asset is not adversely affected by the proposed building, which is some distance away. So in conclusion, obviously it's considered that the proposal would continue to support the local tourist attraction, which is welcomed. It's considered that the proposal complies with policy, and it is recommended that the application be approved. Because works have commenced on site, and the frame is now in situ, it is requested that if members are prepared to grant the application, that delegated authority be granted to officers to issue the decision. Ordinarily, some conditions would be required to be discharged pre-commencement to works starting, so that can't happen as the works have commenced. So we would ask for delegated authority to actually issue a decision once details that we would expect it to have had pre-commencement would have been submitted and agreed. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. We now move on to public speaker. The first public speaker is Mr. Rhys Edwards, who is the applicant. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good morning, all. I'm Rhys Edwards, my wife Aliona. Very briefly, just to say where we are. In February 2020, we had our building flooded by Storm Dennis. At that time, we decided we didn't want this to happen again, and so that very day we decided to way forward was to demolish our building and build a new one in its path. So my children and my wife didn't have to experience the devastation that we had, which was pretty horrendous. So we decided to build a building upon legs that the water could, if it ever did flood, and it was a perfect storm type of flood. If it ever flooded again, it could flood under our feet without us knowing, and could hold the storage without affecting anyone downriver. So that's the way we've designed the building, which is vastly increased the cost of steel, but it was the right way to do it. With this in mind, much better designed building as well. So that's why it is slightly different, and we cut the corners to make it, if we're going to do this, we're going to make it a better building to last us to give us a strong, stable future. So that's how we've come to doing this. Then COVID came, which I don't have to tell you about that. But during COVID, to let you know, we kept on over 20 full-time staff, and we didn't trade for over a year and a half. So we were lucky enough to make it through to the other side and to now start this development. If I can, I want to thank Jackie King with a very firm but professional manner and the communication with this application that she's done with me and both Barry Davis. It has been a long affair, and obviously a lot of issues to work through, and by having someone like this to work through it's easier for all of us. I'd also like to thank Newport Council. They've been 15 years. We've been able to develop the business and build the business into, I would like to think they think is an asset to the area. We are very well thought of through South Wales and not just Newport. And I'd like to thank them for what they've done. We're offering now the leisure, tourism, educational facilities, as well as the good local produce that we have on the farm. This has also enabled us to employ a significant amount of local staff. We did the wages yesterday, and we're up now to 35 local staff, and that's without our building. That's with the temporary marquees. We're running that. So I think the future will, once we get back in our building, will be quite good. I'd like to thank you all for listening to me, and And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Edwards, or Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, thank you. We now move on to the committee. It's Councillor White's ward. Do you wish to speak first, Councillor White?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like to say, initially I had some concerns with this because of the flooding, but I think Jackie's report is quite thorough, and a lot of the issues have been covered. One thing that does concern me a bit is that there's a ditch and pipes running around the edge of the site, which control sort of water coming from Began Road and down to the river. I noticed I couldn't see in the application any condition which might say that ditch should be maintained and the pipes associated with it to a workable standard and kept free and clean at all times, because that would then take away a lot of the concerns of the local residents at the south of the site, because that area of road does tend to flood. I also noticed, I read somewhere that Newport City Council proposed to put another road gully in that area, which will also help to alleviate any flooding in that area. This is not massive flooding like Dennis, but the road does get covered in water at times. As you've heard, this is a local business that employs local people. It's been going for a long time. The highways issues, while in theory they might be considered a concern, in practice, and my experience of the area is that like any rural road, people have to give way when necessary, and I wouldn't think that it's too much of a problem in that area, because as Jackie pointed out in her presentation, there are gateways and other areas where people can pass each other. So all in all, Chair, I think it's a development which is going to improve the facilities for visitors, because it's replacing a bit of a mishmash of buildings with one purpose-built building, and I would support the officer's recommendations, possibly with a condition about maintaining the ditch that runs through the site. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're on mic.
Jackie, you wish? Oh, we're not. No, we were still on shared screen. Yeah. Thank you very much, Councillor White. Anyone else indicating now to speak, please?
Yeah, Chair, Jackie's still got a screen shared made actually.
Yeah.
She needs to click the square box. That's him.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your help, Councillor Jordan.
Yeah.
Anyone wish to
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. I know I'm all for the application and everything else. You know, it's good for the environment. It's good for the kids. Good for education, tourism. But why do we allow applications to start commencing before it comes to committee?
Well, who needs to answer that? Jackie, if you wish, then please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Yeah. Obviously, as a council, we don't condone, or as a planning section, we don't condone that people commence work prior to applications being determined. Weren't aware that the works had commenced until an officer recently visited the site and was able to get the photos to show that the frame had gone up. The application has been with us for a number of weeks, and we have been trying to resolve various issues, but it's not something that we condone. It's not a reason to resist the development. It's not good practice, but obviously the merits of the case still need to be considered, irrespective of whether they have commenced, and that's hopefully what the report has done.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, I totally agree that. Yeah, but no, I know things need to be done, but it's a bit, sometimes a bit funny why the buildings, the application site starts work before it goes to committee sort of thing as well. But I know, I am totally for it, and I will second Councillor White's recommendation. But it is really needed.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Trevor Watkins, you're indicating, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A number of issues, really. Storm Dennis, the cause of the flooding of the property, was that through the issue of the river? And if so, what mitigations have been put in place to prevent it happening again? The other thing is, can Jackie tell me what the length of the single track road is going to the site, please?
Jackie?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Because the site is located in a flood zone, and therefore the application had to be accompanied with a flood consequence assessment to show how any future flood events could be managed. It was a result of the river flooding. I think it was an extreme event, as we probably all recall with Storm Dennis. I'm not aware of any remedial work taking place at the river itself, but Natural Resources Wales were consulted on the application and obviously had full view of the flood consequence assessment. The flood consequence assessment makes recommendations that the building be set at a certain height, and this then protects the building. Beneath the building there is a void which allows for any future flooding to go underneath the building rather than affect the building itself, and then dissipate sort of in a more controlled manner. So therefore the flood storage area of the area isn't affected by the development. But I'm not aware of the actual, the river hasn't had any additional features added to it. I mean, I think it was a bit of an unusual event, not to say it won't happen again, but the flood consequence assessment does demonstrate that certain flood events can be managed, and Natural Resources Wales would support the application as long as there's a condition following the recommendations of the flood consequence assessment and the actual building being set at that height of 23.4 AOD. In terms of the actual length of road, I can, oh gosh, I shall try and share my screen again with you, and hopefully I haven't got the physical length, but I can maybe show you the roads that serve the development.
Talking half a mile, 2 miles.
It's oh well, if I bear with me, I think the various roads serve Kevin Madley. So this is the road that comes in from Caerphilly. It's a narrow road of some considerable length. The borough boundary is here. I mean, you're probably talking sort of 5 miles, at least by this road. From the Newport Borough's point of view, this is Michelson of Edu. The road that serves this and then takes you down to the farm park is in the region of about sort of 2-3 miles. You come at Coalpit Lane from the A48, which is obviously a very decent road. Culpit Lane itself isn't too bad. The roads here and here are fairly narrow, so they are, you know, quite a few miles in length. And then you've got Bagan Road coming from Cardiff, which again is quite a few miles of length of narrow road. So yeah, you are talking quite a few miles of lanes which serve the development. Just as an aside, the Caerphilly Borough Council, as my report says, have considered the transport assessment, and they are satisfied that based on that assessment, they feel that the impact on the network in Caerphilly is acceptable. We haven't had anything back from Cardiff. The site is already there. It is a rural location, and by its nature, you would expect it to be in a rural area. But there is some length of road that serves it, but that is an existing situation. But there are lengths of road, as I say, it is in the region of about 3-4 miles round the site completely, until you get to sort of better infrastructure.
Okay. I got one question following that, if I may, supplementary. What concerns me, Chair, is the fact that the park will also be accommodating education needs from schools and universities and what have you. In that case, I would assume they'd be coming by coach or bus. And obviously with the narrow lanes, that is going to be a difficult situation, especially with the length of road. The parties, I got no problem, because obviously that would be coming, you know, by car, most of it. But the education facilities, which they're proposing to put in place, and I believe are in or was in place at the beginning, I do have concerns about the narrow road, the length of road, and if Newport City Council would be in mind to have some sort of highways contribution to have passing points along one or two of those roads, and possibly Caerphilly Council the same. You know, I am concerned about a coach going along those narrow roads and something coming the other way.
Okay, your concerns are noted, Councillor Watkins. Thank you. Councillor Charles Ferris.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I didn't grasp, following on from what Trevor had raised, I hadn't really grasped this idea that this is a building effectively on stilts, yeah? And if, say, Storm Dennis was to reoccur, you would have flood water underneath the floor space of the building. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes, that's how the building has been designed. Yeah. I can maybe show you on one of the slides.
I see.
This shows it better, actually.
And bear with me, I'm sure you've told us several times, but what is the height of that void?
The building has come up about 0.5 of a metre to a metre from the original level. So the void is under there. That shows that the floor level then comes in at 23.4, but the floor level, it's about approximately 0.5 to a metre higher than the ground level that was previously the floor level of the building. So the void is under there.
So, say if situations like Dennis were to reoccur, you'd have about 2 foot of water underneath the floor space of the business.
Yes, approximately, yes.
Would they still be able to trade if that happened, or would they be allowed to trade if that happened? If they
if the site, what would happen is, obviously, if there was a risk that the site was going to flood, the flood warnings from Natural Resources Wales would notify the applicant that a flood event was going to happen, and you wouldn't want to have members of the public there. It wouldn't be safe. So you wouldn't encourage that they'd be using the site then. So whilst the storm waters were there, I would assume that the farm park would have to close until those waters receded. That is an assumption. That's just, I think that would just be logical.
Yeah, but it would depend on the sensible nature of the trader. It wouldn't necessarily be statutory that, given those circumstances, he's legally bound to close. Am I right in thinking that?
We wouldn't have control on that, over that, no. The applicant would just be notified if they'd signed up to the warnings, which I'm sure they do and will, that a flood event was happening. And I mean, it wouldn't be safe to have members of the public there, so I can't imagine that he would do that.
No. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Ferris, thank you very much. There's no one else indicating to speak. During our discussion, it's been proposed by Councillor White and seconded by Councillor Jordan that we accept officer's recommendation on this application. Is the committee prepared to vote, please? Yeah. So Pamela, could I ask you to implement the voting process, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Clark, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, I'm in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Watkins, please.
For the application.
And Councillor White.
For the application.
Councillor Ferris.
For the application.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, for the application.
Spencer.
Accept, yes.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Okay, that's unanimous in favour of the recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, committee. Before we leave this item, I'd just like to make a bit of an announcement. Jackie King, who's just presented the application to you, is retiring soon, and she's retiring after over 30 years of loyal and dedicated service to Newport City Planning Department and the citizens of Newport. It would be amiss of me, I think, not to register on behalf of the Planning Committee and myself our thanks to Jackie, sincere thanks, and wish her all the best for the future.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we move swiftly on then to the next item on the agenda, which is item 2, pages 39 to 51 of your paperwork. The application number is 21-0588. The site is 40 Constant Street, St Julian's. The ward is St Julian's. The ward members are Councillor Carmel Townsend and Holly Townsend. The presenting officer is Joanne Davidson, and the ward councillor has been granted permission to speak on this item. Thank you very much. So it's over to you, Joanne. Joanne?
Hello, Chair.
Hello.
Sorry.
No problem.
A complete IT glitch then. I was thrown out of the meeting. Right, I'm back. Let me, good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen with you. Sorry about that. Could you just confirm you can see that, Chair?
Yes, fine, Joanne.
Marvellous, thank you. Okay, the application I'm presenting is at 40 Constant Street. It's for change of use of a dwelling to a 6-bedroom house in multiple occupation. Constant Street, see if I can enlarge this a little bit. Okay, so you can see the property that we're looking at outlined in red. It's mid-terrace. For those of you not familiar with Constance Street, it's in the St Julian's ward and a very short distance from Cullion Road District Centre. I'll take you through some photos in a moment, which may help in locating it. The floor plans of the existing building, which, as I've said, is in use as a house, are on the screen now. So living accommodation on the ground floor, 3 bedrooms on the first floor, and they're showing on here a bedroom in the attic, which I'll discuss in a moment too. And the proposed floor plan is introducing 2 bedrooms on the ground floor. So if you can see my cursor at the back here and at the front here, retaining 3 bedrooms on the first floor and retaining a bedroom at the second floor. Now you'll see from the officer report that we've confirmed that the existing dwelling, which has an attic in the bedroom, that attic bedroom has never received the appropriate building control consent. Nothing we can do about that from an historical perspective, but clearly with the change of use, it's something that will need to be regularised. We've discussed it with our building control colleagues who are confident that this can be resolved. And of course, fire regs and the regularisation of the attic room will be a requirement as part of the licensing regime that our environmental health colleagues regulate. But nonetheless, we've put a condition on, or recommended a condition, to ensure that we have confirmation that that regularisation has happened before that particular room is let as part of any HMO, should permission be forthcoming. So the proposal includes a couple of other minor matters which are shown on this plan. So the property is accessed off Constance Street. There is no off-road parking, but it does have a small front yard enclosed by a wall. They're proposing to store bins there and have proposed this small structure to cover the bins. I can see why they've done it because nobody particularly wants to look at bins. However, I'm not entirely convinced about that in the front yard. Having been to site and travelled along the road, the storage of bins in the front yard is frequent. I mean, it's the only place that the residents can store them. So on my site visit, I observed the bins just tucked generally into the side of the front yard, which was fine behind the walls. Not convinced at all that some wooden structure like this is really going to be appropriate in this location. So you'll see we've suggested a condition requiring a waste management strategy. I think we need to tweak that a little bit to ensure that this is not agreed as part of this permission if it's forthcoming, and we potentially do without a structure or seek an alternative. Further into the back garden, you'll see a cycle store. This is a small sort of shed type structure of no concern from an officer perspective. This is the property we're looking at. As you can see, mid-terrace, standard, no alterations proposed externally to the frontage. Here's the wall that I talked about, which is characteristic of the street. Most of the units, if not all, have them. And as I said, we can see a bin here. They're generally tucked behind that wall. That's how the residents store their bins generally. Okay, aerial photo then, again, which will help us place this. So 40 Constance Street is marked with the red arrow here, or the red point. This is Cullion Road, which my cursor is running along now. So this is one of our primary thoroughfares. We have bus stops along it. It is a primary bus route. You can see some pointers there on local facilities, spa, Regs, etc. So this is on a level walking distance of the district centre on Cullion Road, which is very vibrant. The main policy for us to consider as part of HMO applications in the LDP is this one, policy H8. And that really sets out to us from a policy perspective the matters we should be looking at when we look at changes of use to houses in multiple occupation. I think that's all self-explanatory and members will be familiar with the main issues when it comes to HMOs because we've seen these many times before. So there's an issue of concentration, impact on amenity and character, impact on parking, noise insulation and amenity for future occupiers. So they're the key issues, as we probably already know. So let's take a look at parking a second, because you'll see in the officer report we've had significant local objection to this application in the form of both letters and a petition. And the officer report has attempted to really detail all the concerns that have been raised by residents. So that runs into several pages on your agenda. And one of the key concerns, as is commonplace for applications of change of use of this nature, is parking and the associated impact on highway safety and amenity. So I've just copied there, this is in your officer report as well, but the response of the highway officer, and you can see that the highway officer raises no objection on parking grounds. What the highway officer is telling us is that as a house, which is its lawful use, we would ordinarily expect 3 off-road parking spaces, and as I've previously mentioned, none are provided. All this property and all its neighbours are very heavily reliant on local streets for parking. So the HMO, strictly speaking, looking at the SPG, would require 7 parking spaces. That's based on the number of bedrooms and visitor space allocation set out in the SPG. So that results in a shortfall, strictly speaking, and in line with the supplementary planning guidance of 4 spaces. So straight away, we're looking at what is the on-street demand like? Is there any evidence that would robustly defend, for example, a potential objection on highway grounds? Now, we have a parking survey submitted as part of the application. It does accord with the Lambeth methodology for such surveys, which we've mentioned in the past, and the highways officer has confirmed this. They have looked at parking on nearby streets, specifically within a short walk distance or 200 metres of the site. So not just Constant Street, that includes some of the neighbouring streets as well. There is no doubt at all from the parking survey, which was taken over 2 days on weekdays, early afternoon and very early morning, that there is not a plentiful supply of parking in this area. I don't think we ever expected that there would be. So there is certainly a high degree of parking pressure in the locality. And that is no doubt related to the reliance of residents for the street for parking. However, what the survey does show is that in relation to the shortfall of 4, that this generates, according to the SPG, we have enough space on the site. That is at both times. That's very early morning on a weekday and early afternoon. And the reason why those 2 times are important is because of the proximity of this area to the district centre. So during the daytime, there is a degree of overspill of commercial parking associated with the district centre, although in my opinion, on Constant Street in particular, the pressure is primarily from residents themselves and their visitors. So as I've said on the bottom of that slide, no objection from the Head of City Services on parking. I've just summarised what the survey tells you there as well. So the survey's telling us sufficient space for spaces associated with the development, and the highways officer agrees. Is just a little bit off the bottom of that slide. So that assessment by the highways officer and the parking survey does not, of course, take account of sustainability factors at all. So members will be aware that insustainable locations will generally lower our parking expectation, and that is allowed for in the supplementary planning guidance. What it also doesn't account for is what we've seen come through frequently in appeal decisions on proposals to change uses in sustainable location, and that is an assumed lower car ownership rate for residents. So moving on to the concentration issue, this is also included in your agendas, but this is the 50-metre radius required by the HMO supplementary planning guidance for us to assess any concentration issues. Within that 50-metre radius, there are no other houses in multiple occupation licensed by our Environmental Health Service. So there is no concentration issue in accordance with the supplementary planning guidance, and no other HMOs within that radius. I'm going to take you through some photos now. So again, another shot of the property that we're looking at. As I say, no external changes proposed. Slight caveat on that because I've already mentioned that bin store. So that little bin storage structure that the applicant showed us going in here, hopefully you can see my cursor there. I'm not keen on that at all, and I don't think it will be characteristic. So my advice would be to take that out, and we can do that via tweaking the condition we already have on waste storage management. This is Constant Street. This is a daytime site visit by the case officer. So just showing sort of a typical weekday street environment. And again, looking in the other direction. So you see what I mean, parking is prevalent. It's not plentiful by any stretch. Some internal shots now of the property, just to give you an idea of, the type of accommodation we're looking at. Some taken up in the attic there, which I've already discussed, and the back garden, which looks like it needs a little bit of TLC, but showing where that shed for the cycle storage will be going at the back there, which is not concern to officers. Okay, so now we've got some time shots taken at, at a period when you perhaps expect to see some more resident parking, and that's on a Sunday afternoon. So again, some more shots of Constant Street on the Sunday at 2:30. And these shots that follow now are of the nearby streets, again, just to give you an idea of local character, local parking conditions and road conditions generally. Rockfield Street, these are all taken on the Sunday early afternoon. Gore Street, Alicia Street, all very close by, accessed off a level on Constant Street. And as I say, parking in all these shots, but also notably from an officer perspective, parking spaces in all of these shots. Esk Street. Okay, moving through. Constant Street, this is 6 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. Again, just some sort of differences in timings. So informing our parking judgments on this are our own visits at various times and the parking survey, along with the highway officer comments. And again, Usk Street, which is actually just off Constant Street, 6 p.m. Tuesday evening. Constant Street, again, to give you a better idea of where this is and the level access to Cullion Road and the facilities, bus routes, etc. that offers having regard to sustainability factors, is the street right in front of us here. So this is Constant Street. The site that we're looking at is sort of at the far end, but nevertheless a walk, a level walk to the district centre and the bus route. Okay, and really just summing up the presentation, and obviously I'm here to answer questions, but the conclusions on the HMO are comparable really with conclusions we've made on other similar applications. We definitely note the neighbour objections generally and in relation to parking. But the fact that on-street space may not be plentiful, and we're not saying it is here, has proven to not be a robust reason to refuse planning permission. Inspectors, as we know, assume that car ownership in HMO properties will be lower, and that's particularly so in sustainable locations such as this. And when taking account of the recent appeal decisions, the generally positive attitude of the Welsh Inspector to HMOs in sustainable locations, irrespective of whether they have off-street parking, the parking survey undertaken by the applicant and the lack of objection from the council's highway officer, it is considered that there is sufficient on-street capacity in the area to accommodate the additional demand that the proposed HMO would result in without significant and demonstrable, and this is, this word demonstrable is important here, adverse effect on neighbouring amenity and certainly highway safety. So given the highly sustainable nature of the site, officers recommend that there is no demonstrable harm resulting from the proposals in terms of either highway safety or neighbouring amenity or the other material factors in the relevant local development plan policy. And so we recommend, Chair, that the application is granted subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joanne. Thank you very much. Board member speaking, Councillor Carmel Townsend. Thank you, Carmel.
Chair, do I have a limit on time or anything?
I think I'd better refer that question to the lead.
I've made quite a lot of notes, you see, and you can't tell from writing what how long you're going to take when you speak.
I thought you'd have mastered that technique.
Sorry, I'll try to keep it short.
To the legal officer.
Chair, that's because it's a ward councillor, it's at your discretion.
Okay.
There's no limit.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. On average, there are 40 antisocial behaviour crimes reported around half a mile from Constant Street, with regular reports of antisocial behaviour every month on the street itself. Given these statistics, it's very disappointing that Gwent Police did not respond to the consultation. Regarding 3.7, who determines what an overconcentration of houses in multiple occupation is? Could somebody go on the record and declare what mechanism the council uses to determine this? Regarding 5.1, when was the parking survey undertaken? Well, we've just seen when it was undertaken, and many other applications can confirm. Sorry, can confirmation be given as to how the Lambeth methodology can continue to be used, given that almost every application that has ever been approved has resulted in a lack of parking spaces? Continuing use of this flawed methodology must be overhauled. In 5.4, why is there no response from Street Scene given the additional impact on refuse collection and waste in the area? This would appear to be an important application to comment on. In 5.6, it's very worrying that it is assumed that the applicant would be changing the attic, when then planning If this is the case, then planning consent must be withheld, as we would be giving implicit consent for a further bedroom in the building, which would not then need planning permission. This very point underlines why we continue to be concerned by these applications. Was the Lambeth methodology undertaken on the basis of future attic conversions? This seems to be addressed in point 10. Can the officers confirm what would happen in the event of an attic conversion for a residential room? There is a huge strength of feeling from residents of Constance Street with particular issues like antisocial behaviour and the growth of waste. These are the two issues that Gwent Police and Street Scene haven't responded to. Therefore, this application should not be approved because of a lack of engagement by the relevant stakeholders to residents' concerns. As one resident points out, there are 75 HMOs in the nearby area. At what stage does this prevalence of HMOs trigger point 3.7? And I ask again, what and who determines what is an overconcentration, and will that decision maker be accountable when the impacts of overconcentration are felt by residents? It appears in 7.6 that the criteria is set by considering properties within 50 metres. This is wholly farcical, given that this radius does not even include the entirety of Constance Street. It's not enough of a radius to be given a true picture of the impact on local residents, particularly in parking. I would like the internal report to be made public. 7.7. Residents have a right to know what these reports are saying. Regarding disability parking, the lack of consideration for people with disabilities demonstrates a lack of consideration to the principles of the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, and could fall foul of the equalities legislation if people with disabilities were found to be unfairly disadvantaged by not being able to access their houses. Particularly on 7.9, how can this be adequately assessed if the head of Street Scene hasn't responded or commented? It shows utter contempt for residents and their concerns. In 7.10, this decision appears to be made on the basis of an unpublished report. This is not democratic, it has zero accountability, and residents have the right to feel angry and let down by this administration for lack of openness. In 7.12, could the survey reflect how they calculated the ability of residents to walk? One parent of a child with mobility problems was refused a disabled parking bay and says that sometimes the walk to Usk Street isn't possible. This is an ableist, short-sighted review of parking and should be challenged. In 8.4, I'd like this assessment under the Equality Act to be made public. What considerations were made and how were the decisions reached, and who was approached for advice? Please can the evidence for this assessment be made available to councillors and to the public so we can see how the decision was reached. I'm nearly finished now. To conclude, it has been demonstrated that HMOs have a detrimental impact on the character of an area. The residents' comments provide a clear demonstration of how close-knit the community is, and this is reflected in the number of well-maintained properties. The policy of 50 metres and a 10% threshold for HMOs is deeply flawed and disadvantages densely built areas. A property or two in a lower density residential area is likely to exceed the 10% requirement and would be refused. There's a lack of detail relating to the parking survey, and the suggestion that Margaret Avenue and Alicia Street can handle parking stress is ludicrous. Have officers really examined the area's sustainability? There have been major cuts to bus services, which has increased car dependency, and this shows that HMO policy is not fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend, for that detailed presentation. Can I move back to Joanne Davidson, please? There's a long list of questions, queries and opinions there, and I'm sure you'll do your best to answer most of them.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, a lot of points there, really. I'm not going to promise to answer all of them, and I apologise in advance if I miss some of them. So, okay, first of all, as you know, as part of our process, we consult who we consider is appropriate and necessary to consult. There are statutory obligations on us and non-statutory. But what we can't do is make the consultees respond to our consultations. So what we've reported to you is what we've received, and we will make our consideration based on that. The issue of parking, obviously I fully expect that to be a major issue on applications of this type. I'm not underestimating that at all. The parking survey that was submitted with the planning application is available for the public to view. It's on the website. It was, I think I mentioned as part of my presentation, done over 2 weekdays, actually the 8th and 9th of July, I believe, which is a Thursday and a Friday. And I'm pretty certain it was done at 1:30 p.m. And 12:30 a.m. so just after midnight on both those days. Now, we don't necessarily take those parking surveys as read. The highway officer clearly has considered it and based their comments on it, confirmed it accords with the Lambeth methodology, which, dare I say, is the only really robust or apparently robust methodology for such survey work. The highway officer has not objected as a result. So we have done our own site visits. I provided a fair number of photographs as part of the presentation at various times. They're our own photographs. They're not the photographs of the applicant. Because, as far as I'm concerned as an officer, if I get a parking survey that says there's, I don't know, 50% capacity parking, and every time I go out I can't find a space, then something's amiss. And we will challenge it on that basis, and we have done on other applications for HMOs for those reasons, and we'll strongly defend our position. On this one, the parking survey doesn't say the parking is plentiful. In fact, parking capacity in the parking survey the applicant has provided us with is running at about 90%. So we know already, before we've even been out to site, that there's lots of parking on the street. And when we've been out ourselves, our observations appear to tie in with that. So it's not at full capacity. There are spaces available within short distance of the site, but it is not plentiful. Now, as much as I'd like to say that in situations like that, that should be enough to say no more. No more applications that could increase parking should be allowed. The fact is we've been there, done that and tried it several times, and from my own experience I've come across worse cases than this in terms of parking. Again, that we've attempted to very robustly defend at appeal and lost, and the main reason we lose is not necessarily because the inspector disagrees that with us on parking. Often the inspector will agree that it's not plentiful, but what they seem to say is in sustainable locations, these occupiers aren't going to have the degree of car ownership that you think they will. The parking generated as per our SPG standard, which I confirmed early on was 7 spaces for this, they say that's not realistic. In a sustainable location, in reality, the difference in the parking arising from the HMO compared to the dwelling is nominal, if anything. Now, I can't, that is just the experience that we've acquired over a fairly long period of time now on these. And which is why, as part of the presentation, I wanted members to be clear about where this is. And I understand what Councillor Townsend is saying. but there is no doubt in my mind that as locations go, this is a sustainable location. It's level, it's very close in terms of walking distance to the district centre. It's it's a primary route with bus access, etc. So it's certainly more sustainable than some other locations that we've encountered. So I don't think we can ignore the sustainability factors, and certainly an inspector wouldn't ignore it. Now, as far as the attic conversion issue is concerned, some of the objectors have raised this, and they're absolutely right. So the house at the moment has an attic bedroom. Not a lot we can do about that while it's in use as a house, but clearly they want to change the use, and they're telling us that's existing and a proposed bedroom. Well, as members will know, we're not the only player in the regulatory game on HMOs. Building regs have an input, as does environmental health licensing. So we're just one part of the jigsaw. So EH licensing and building regs will look to regularise the attic conversion, because the attic conversion in reality will need upgrading, there's no doubt, most likely through noise insulation at that attic level, but perhaps more notably the fire regs and a safe route, which will affect right down the stairwell of the building and other parts of the building. But those matters are regulated by others, and we can be confident that they're regulated by others because they're regulated by other council departments. And so if the applicant does not do the necessary works, they cannot let that bedroom in the attic, and whether or not the committee decides to grant this application does not affect that. The licensing is a separate regulatory control which they also require, and ours does not supersede theirs, if that makes sense. So the internal research paper, which isn't published, I think we've actually in your agendas at paragraph 7.7 to 7.10 reproduced the relevant elements in our officer report. It's quite standard in our formatting for HMO applications to do that. So we talk about what that internal research paper says insofar as it relates to this particular area. Okay. But I think Councillor Townsend raises wider issues, Chair, that I can't really answer, and that is issues relating to the content of our supplementary planning guidance, which are adopted documents insofar as both parking standards are concerned and the HMO concentration 50-metre radius 15 or 10% issue. I can only work right now with what we've got in terms of our adopted policy and guidance. There may be wider issues for the committee to consider, not necessarily as part of this application in terms of our adopted policy documents, but I can't really deal with that now today as part of this application, because we have to look at this and consider this in light of the policy documents we have right now, whether we like them or we don't like them, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I hope that helps anyway.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that, for those answers. And I wouldn't expect a planning officer to be drawn into the politics of any situation. And obviously some of the points that have been raised by Councillor Townsend need to be discussed in that environment. And I'm sure she accepts and acknowledges that.
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can I open it up to committee, please? Anyone indicating? Charles Ferris?
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if they have little narrow houses and little narrow streets in Lambeth, but that's another story. Joanne, could we look again at that picture of Constance Street, please, pointing towards the railway embankment? No. Yeah, that's the one. So, Joanne, am I right in thinking that Constance Street at this point is a dead end?
Yes.
And so there's no turning hammerhead at the bottom of Constance Street?
Can I answer that, Chair? Is that okay? Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, I thought this. I drove up Constance Street and had a mild panic thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to do a 3-point turn at the end. What actually happens around here is there's a sort of partial one-way setup. Excuse me. So off to the right, you can probably see where my cursor is, a break in the terrace.
Yeah.
There's actually a turning right there. So if you decide you've gone up the wrong street and you don't actually want to be in Constance Street, and exactly what I did is I drove up and then I took this right turn, and then I travelled, I think it's Rockfield Street off the top of my head. I might be wrong there, but yes, so it is a dead end. There is no official turn-in area or formal turn-in area at the end, but there is actually a right turn near the end of the street, so you can get out of the street.
Effectively, you can go around the block at that point.
Yeah, which is what I did, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, could I look again at that sort of blue disc that you've got that shows the permitted areas of, the permitted amounts of HMOs in a given radius? So that's it. That's acceptable. How many more of those little houses would have to be filled in before it became unacceptable?
15% of those. So can't remember if we put the numbers in our report.
So how many more would you have to see filled in effectively before it would be considered, aha, there are too many?
Okay, sorry, bear with me. I'm just checking the report. Okay, so the report at paragraph 7.6 says within that radius that you're looking at, there are 35 dwellings, and none of them are currently HMOs. So if the council were to allow this one, it would be 2.9%.
So how many more houses, please?
Oh, you're gonna have to. You're asking me to do some maths now. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Bear with me. It's actually 10%. Sorry, I'm looking at the, so it's four houses.
3 or 4 houses before it becomes
yeah, over the threshold.
That seems a lot to me when you consider, say, 3 or 4 houses, say if they were all 6, that would be an extra, what, 20, 30 residents?
Yeah. So, I mean, if they were all, because we don't count the number of rooms, we count the number of units, as in former dwellings, as in buildings. So, you know, if you assume that the limit on the numbers of bedrooms in each would be 6, just like this one.
Yeah.
Then let's assume then again 4 of those units is 6 bedrooms, 4 times 6, 24. Yeah, so you know, it could be a lot more bedrooms, a lot more individual tenants.
So effectively, really, what we're saying, it only starts to become unacceptable when you've got something like 25% of the residents of the street are bedsit dwellers.
Well, it's a house in multiple occupation, so slightly different, but you know, I wouldn't call them bed sits. And of course, these are dwellings. Well, in this case, it's a 3-bedroom dwelling already, so you'd expect there to be, I don't know, potentially 4 residents in the unit, possibly more, lawfully as a dwelling. So you'd only be looking at the added number of residents. But I mean, as I've said, really in response to Councillor Townsend's notes, this is what the supplementary planning guidance that we have adopted says on HMOs, and I've got to say, it is not unlike our neighbouring authorities in terms of concentration expectations or limits, thresholds. So we're not out on a limb here as an authority in terms of what we considered to be an acceptable or unacceptable concentration in our adopted SPGs. But in terms of comparing the SPG and questioning the content of the SPG and the acceptability of the threshold, I think that's got to be for another day, because, you know, right now in our assessment of this planning application, this is the adopted SPG that is relevant, and this is the adopted SPG that we have to give weight to as part of our determination process. And unless there is something material that tells us very clearly, and if you remember, we had the Chief Planning Inspector in talking about evidence-based decision making, unless we have clear evidence that the concentration of HMOs in this area is unacceptable or will become unacceptable with this one. So the sorts of factors I would perhaps think about are the condition of buildings, the condition of visible spaces on the street. Is there obvious and significant deterioration in visual amenity? Is there rubbish sweeping up and down the street? You know, this sort of thing, which I've, in fairness, seen in parts of Cardiff, dare I say. Then, you know, I honestly think that there would be a difficult argument to run on a situation like this where we have no SPG concentration issues and no other evidence from an officer perspective that would indicate that there is a concentration and character issue here.
Last question, Joanne. Tell me, is it in England or is it in Wales that public opinion is considered as a valid reason for objection?
All objections, well, have been detailed in our officer report, so we've taken account of it all, Councillor, and obviously the committee should do the same. But planning decisions must be made in accordance with planning policy unless material considerations indicate otherwise. That's the legal basis of all the decisions we must take. And so that's why, you know, I've tried to present the policy, the policy basis, also lots of photographs. We've detailed the objections, the comments of the consultees, statutory, non-statutory, and ultimately the decision is with the committee, of course. But certainly from an officer perspective, we can see no demonstrable harm here, but it's open to committee to make a contrary decision to our recommendation, of course, if it feels that there is a demonstrable and robust reason to refuse.
Public opinion would be one of those.
Could I just say there, though, with what Joanna said, which has been a very professional answer, there will be consequences, and the committee are aware of those consequences if appeals are lodged. Could I then move to Mark Spencer, Councillor Spencer? And then Councillor George.
Thank you, Chair. There's just one
point I can see here in the recommendations, general conditions 02, the property shall have a maximum of 6 bedrooms and 6 occupants. So is that one person per 1 bedroom? And are these all single sized bedrooms?
Okay. Joanne, do you wish to answer that now, please?
Okay, yes, Councillor, we're expecting 6 bedrooms, 6 occupants, so 1 occupant per bedroom, so a maximum of 6.
Okay.
I smile, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer, and thank you for smiling. Councillor Jason Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As we all do that, you know, we all smile things like that because they wonder how many people you get in the bedroom, I suppose. Yeah, it's just exactly the same what Joanne sort of brought of things, you know, with the bins, how many bins would be provided for that house, and would they want them outside somebody's bedroom window? Also, what is the planning guidance of the size of the rooms of a HMO? Because, some rooms are going to be smaller than others. And what's the sort of like a living space it can give for them?
Do you wish to answer now, Joanne, or?
I'll do my best. Yeah, so we do assess the future amenity of future residents. I'm just checking your agendas for relevant section, so bear with me. Okay. Yeah, so paragraph 7.11, I think, deals with it. In short, though, in answer, I think, well, I have mentioned before, there are several regulatory strands to HMOs. The licensing service of our environmental health section do have to license HMO properties, and one of their primary considerations is size of rooms. So we do consult our HMO licensing colleagues as part of the planning application, and their response is noted at paragraph 5.3 of the officer report. And what we normally find is if our HMO colleagues have some rather serious concerns about the internal layout of a property that comes to us, they will tell us at the planning application stage, because if there is no chance at all of a property being licensed based on the information before us, then we like to know about it. So we've got no objection from our licensing colleagues. And as I said, as an extra factor here, we've also spoken to our building control colleagues, who also tell us that there's a reasonable prospect of the property coming in line with other regulations that we don't normally deal with, like fire regs. So we've got no problem at all with the size of the rooms. We've checked the layout, the internal layout. They all have a decent window, and we don't take that as a given, because frequently we'll see layouts that don't even have a window. So the layout on the face of it looks fine. From a planning perspective, and as I said, there are the regulatory controls on that that will come separately. As far as the bins are concerned, we didn't get a response. Councillor Townsend's already noted this from our waste colleagues on the application. I'm not sure why that is, but bearing in mind what we've seen on site, I have no major concerns with waste storage. This property has the benefit of that walled enclosure to the front, and everyone else that I observed on the site visit stored their bins in that area, and it was fine. It wouldn't look at all out of place. The only thing I was concerned about was the structure that the applicant wanted to put there. And that front window, that front bay, is going to be a bedroom, as you rightly say, but on the existing property is a lounge. So I don't see that as an issue in terms of the relationship of the bin storage to the window. Does that answer it, or have I missed something?
Yeah, you've answered it, but I'm just thinking, if his HMO is 6 people, you know, how many bins would be provided for that property? You know, I even know, like, for one house is 1 green bin, 1 orange bin, but then is it going to be like 3 green bins and an orange bin stuck outside somebody's bedroom window, smelling in the warm weather? Do you mean things like that? That's a bit of a health hazard, really, as well. You know, and also I've been looking. I've done a few bit more calculations in my head and everything else, and the amount of the parking issues as well with the 4 extra parking spaces we had there. When we done the application on Durham Road, that big sort of that complex there, we had, I think, between 9 and 11 spaces we had to find outside on the street. You know, which I calculated roughly is about 61 meters of car parking space where what we really needed for them. And I also know as well, you actually also got a house of multiple occupancy a bit further down in Constant Street as well, and also one on Durham Road as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, there are other HMOs in the vicinity, but not within that 50-metre radius. You're right as well. We've got that new housing development on the old school. I think that's the one you're referring to, just around the corner. That's all built and occupied now. So the parking situation that you see on your photographs is with that development complete and with those HMOs occupied. So, you know, it's the current situation in terms of parking on the street. As far as the bins, sorry, going back to the bins are concerned, I'm not even sure that they would benefit from an additional bin, but I can't imagine that we're going to suddenly end up with 6 bins outside the property. So this is a house in multiple occupation after all. These aren't bed sits or flats, so they don't get their individual bin per householder or per tenant. They share. Like they share their amenity space, and they share their lounge and their kitchen, etc. So I'm not expecting a significant increase in waste receptacles for the property.
Okay, thank you,
Can
Chair.
I have another question, Chair? Sorry. Yeah, with the parking sort of mythology they work out, why do they do it in such different times, like 2:30 and 6 o'clock, like a Sunday 2:30, you know, people go out for lunch maybe on things like that, and 6 o'clock in the evening you might find people are still at home from work in the evening. So why doesn't it be a time scale around like at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock a.m. in the morning, where people are actually home, and also on weeknights around about 8, 9 o'clock at night? That's when you'll find the full capacity of the car parking situation within that street.
Yeah, so the parking survey submitted by the applicant was done at midnight on two weekday nights, and done at 1:30 in the afternoon. Our site visits, we generally try to go out on a weekend, really where we think that the primary demand for parking is from residents, which we thought it probably would be around here. Hence the reason why our photographs are 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon. But then because there's an element of commercial overspill, and it's I mean, you know, it can be difficult to pinpoint when the worst parking occurs. So we also decided to go out at 6 p.m. on a weekday evening, a different evening again on a Tuesday, really to try and get different snapshots at different times, because well, we feel that that's the most robust way of doing it. So we don't have one day or one night or one weekend. We try and go out multiple times to test whether the parking survey the applicant has given us appears to be accurate, and if clearly we can see things don't seem to fit, we'll raise it with the applicant, and potentially that will be a reason for refusal. But everything we've seen on the various times we've been out, weekdays, weekends, has fit with the parking survey that the applicant gave us. So we've got no reason to dispute the parking situation, and as I say, it's not plentiful, and no one is arguing that it is.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. All right, Councillor Jordan. Thank you. Next, Councillor Richard White.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Noise transfer between walls in terraced houses is a problem. I assume building regulations will control this, but who would actually do the tests for the immediate neighbours who may be experiencing excess noise if this application is granted? The other thing is, well, is amenity of residents of the house and the neighbours on the amenity space at the back garden, which the photograph Joanne showed was in a bit of a mess. What controls are in place to ensure that that is brought up to a reasonable standard for an amenity space? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, Councillor, I'm not a building regs expert. I'll tell you that now. But my understanding is that insofar as the attic is concerned, which we've talked quite a lot about, building regs will have complete control, and they will secure appropriate intervening insulation, etc. Not only from a noise point of view, but from a fire regulations point of view. In terms of the rest of the house, the fire regulation requirements will mean safe means of escape will extend down to other floors of the building, and assumedly out the front door or back door. But in terms of the standard of the intervening walls as they exist at ground and first floor, I don't believe building regs would have any control over that, because the building is currently a house and will continue to be used for residential purposes. So different if there was a change of use to something commercial, for example. But because it's remaining in residential, I don't believe building control will have any influence over intervening walls. I'm not aware that EH licensing will either. So if that is something that is of concern to members, a condition would need to be added and suitably worded. As far as the rear garden is concerned, yes, the rear garden currently looks like it needs a bit of TLC, but of course the building is likely vacant at present, so we wouldn't ordinarily put a condition on requiring them to cut the grass or anything, because it's onerous. So again, the fact that they've got the amenity space and access to the amenity space is sufficient for our purposes, but members can take a different view on that, of course.
Okay. Okay, Joanne, thank you very much. Councillor Trevor Watkins, you were indicating, please.
Yes, just caught in, Chair. Two things, Chair. Are there any residents' parking requirements on roads within that 50 metres? And the other thing is 7.8, the graph underneath that. Can you tell me what that is about? St Julian's, and in brackets W01001675.
Chair, could the highways officer perhaps comment on resident permit parking in that area? I don't believe there is any, I should say, Councillor, on Constant Street, but perhaps the highway officer can clarify on that.
I'm just going to check on the records for you. I don't believe that there is, otherwise it would have been included in my comments. It's something that obviously restricts the number of parking spaces generally to 2 per dwelling. And for an HMO, that would count as 1 dwelling. It's Constance Street. Oh, excuse me, it's just a typo. No, I can confirm. Would you like to?
No, if you just confirm that there's no residential parking permits required, then that's happy. I'm happy with that.
Absolutely, there isn't. If you can see that, the areas highlighted red are adopted highway, the areas highlighted yellow are unadopted. If I zoom, you can't actually, but it's going. The residence parking bays are normally shown as blue lines, so that's clear.
Okay, Chair, somebody can explain that paragraph then at the bottom of 7.8.
Yeah, I'll do that, Chair. Okay, so the LSOA is lower super output area. These were research areas for the purpose of that paper, that internal research paper. And we've, I think, tried to explain it in paragraph 7.8. So it falls within the lower super output area of St Julian's 1. That figure following the W is just sort of a reference figure. And the St Julian's 1 lower super output area ranked 6th highest out of all the lower super output areas in Newport in terms of HMO concentration. So that lower super output area of St Julian's 1 is a much bigger area than that 50-metre radius you've seen today. So includes more properties in it. So it was 6th of all the areas in Newport, subdivided for the purpose of the research paper in terms of the concentration of HMOs. This research paper is a little bit dated now, I should say, so that may have potentially changed. It was the 3rd highest in terms of complaints received in relation to potential HMOs, and 32nd highest in terms of recorded crime. We try and include these figures in all our HMO reports now, have done for some time. And the reason being is part of our added assessment then over and above the 50-metre catchment issue. So we have had, for example, in the past, HMOs not in St Julian's, dare I say, but in other areas of Newport, where we've had HMO applications that would have taken the threshold, would have taken the concentration up to or slightly over the threshold in our SPG. And having regards to evidence-based decision making that the planning inspectorate use, we use that research paper and have done ever since to show a little bit of a bigger or a wider picture of things in that area. And we have in the past shown or attempted to show that bigger picture suggests there's something, going on, something negative perhaps, and that has assisted us in refusals on HMOs, and we have defended on that basis at appeal. and afraid to say we've lost. I'm not saying it was the right or the wrong decision by the inspectorate, but that's just the way it is. So that paragraph and those figures are really an added picture of what's going on in that part of St Julian's. So wider than the 50 metres, we're talking about a bigger area of St Julian's. It's really so you've got everything that you can know and need to know that may inform how you think about this proposal.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. The other thing is, Joanne, complaints received by who? Is that Newport City Council or received by the police or the joint complaints by both organisations?
I'll be absolutely honest, Councillor, I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone on the meeting who can answer that for definite. I mean, I would take.
Joanne, I think it's complaints received by environmental health.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Then, I mean, what I was going to say is I would take complaints received with a slight pinch of salt. Because, you know, just because a complaint received doesn't mean that it's a justified one. But nevertheless, again, it's just all trying to form that picture of character, amenity overall in that wider area.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Thank you, Joanne. Councillor Jordan, you've sent me a message. Do you wish to expand on what you've said in that message?
Yeah, what it was, Chair, it was just the reason behind the Sundays and the Tuesdays and the times, which was like the survey was done when those shops were most of 99% of the shops would have been closed on that day as well, because it was a Sunday, and also in the evening time after 6 o'clock, most of all the shops were shut. That's why I was trying to get it with the time scale as well, with the surveys being done.
Okay, I think that point's been noted then. Thank you. Right, we've had a good discussion and a detailed discussion, and the officers have replied in some detail. Is somebody prepared to propose something, please?
Yeah, Chair, it's Councillor Clark. Can I come in?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, I think sort of, you know, I've been listening sort of obviously keenly, and with the evidence-based information and the guidelines provided and the planning policies in place, whether or not it's a popular decision, but I'd like to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is someone prepared to second that, please? Anyone prepared to second that, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's been proposed and seconded that we accept the officer's recommendation for this application, which is granted with conditions as outlined by the presenting officer. Pam, could you organise a vote, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I have your vote, please, Councillor Clark?
Yeah, as said, accept officer's recommendation.
Councillor Watkins, please.
For the officer's recommendation.
White.
Reluctantly for the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ferris.
Against.
Councillor Jordan.
Against.
Councillor Spencer.
Against.
And yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
That's 4 in favour and 3 against the officer's recommendations.
Okay, so the officer's recommendation is carried. Okay. Okay, well, thank you, committee. The final item on the agenda, if you agree to note, are the enforcement notices. Is it agreed that we note those?
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And I think we've reached the end of this planning committee meeting. I thank you all for attending and see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.